These are the austerities that are given to us by the acharyas to practice Krishna consciousness. If we follow those basic ones, of course, there are other austerities, such as fasting today. We fast all the way to moonrise. Actually, it's the sunset, till sunset. And that is an austerity too. It purifies the body, purifies the heart and mind, and allows for one to become more absorbent in spiritual activities. So we look forward to performing austerities because it gives us a chance to make it spiritual advancement. And Hiranyakashipu, but he was performing austerities not for anything spiritual, but he wanted to become powerful. And so he stood on his tippy toes with his arms straight up in the air for 1,000 celestial years. And during that time, an anthill had built around his body, so much so that his complete body was covered with ants, and they devoured his flesh. But he was able to keep his life going simply by the yoga system. Although he was a demon, he knew the process of pranayama yoga. And therefore, he was able to maintain his life airs within his bones and keep his life alive, although his body completely was destroyed by the insects. He performed this so powerfully that the demigods became really alarmed. So they alerted Lord Brahma. When Brahma came to the scene to see what was happening, he greeted Lord Brahma. In order to, because he thought Lord Brahma was the Supreme Lord. And therefore, when Brahma came, he said, Hiranyakashipu, your austerities are imperfect. Please ask a benediction for me. And then he took the opportunity. I want to become immortal. Brahma said, that is not a benediction I can give because I am not immortal. Anyone that's under the influence of the material energy cannot become immortal. And so he asked, take another benediction. So Hiranyakashipu was thinking of all the ways not to die. Killed by land, sea, or air, by any animal, beast, any living creature, and not in the sky, not in daytime, not in nighttime. He's thought of so many ways by which death can come, and Brahma gave him that benediction. And now he was thinking, I'm immortal. He tried to get immortality in a roundabout way. And then he started harassing the demigods, and he took over the throne of Indra, sat on the throne, had his followers organize everything around him, and the demigods flee to heavenly planets, except for Brahma, Shiva, and Hiranyakashipu had 4 sons. His last son was Prahlad. We were talking this morning about the birth of Prahlad, how he became a son of a demon. Because in one of his last births, he was associated with a prostitute. And they had an argument. And they fasted and didn't sleep the whole night because they were arguing the whole night. And that night was the appearance day of Lord Vishnudev. So unknowingly, he got the mercy of Lord Vishnudev, and therefore he was able to take birth in a demoniac family because of his demonic activities. But he was a great personality. And when he was in the womb of his mother, Kayadu, he heard the entire spiritual philosophy, in other words, the process of pure devotional service, for a number of days, spoken by Sri Narayana himself, who spoke to his mother. His father, Hiranyakashipu, was away at that time, and therefore he took the advantage to speak transcendental knowledge to the boy. And then the boy was so adept that even while he was in the womb of his mother, he was able to assimilate all of that knowledge We also know that the child is very sentient, even when it is still within the womb of the mother. They can perceive outside influences, although they can't react, they can still assimilate. But Prahlad was so advanced in his spiritual life that he was able to understand the philosophy. When he came out, he was completely freed from all material desires, from all material activities, and became a great devotee of the Lord. His father sent him to the school. He sent him to the Asura pool. We had the Dura pool. This was the Asura pool. And where his fellow demons had sent their sons for training under two Brahmas known as Sanda and Amarta. But Prahlad wouldn't go along with the lessons. He never liked what they were teaching, because they were always teaching how to destroy your enemy, how to gain a kingdom, how to become very wealthy and powerful. But Prahlad Maharaj would always resist his teachers, and they couldn't do anything with him. They tried to make him into a demon, but he was not, you might say, cooperative. So they brought him to his father, Hiranyakashipu, and said, we're trying to teach him, but we can't get anywhere. So maybe you can teach him. And so Hiranyakashipu, being his son, he said, oh, my dear Prahlad, so what have you learned in school today? Please tell me your lessons, just like, parents do that, right? We have our children, they come home. What did you learn today in school? And then sometimes they tell you something they don't want to hear. But this was Prahlad. He said, my dear Lord and my dear Father, the rest of the demons included, I learned that hearing and chanting the glories of Lord Vishnu and worshiping Lord Vishnu, remembering Lord Vishnu, offering prayers to Lord Vishnu, chanting the glories of Lord Vishnu, becoming a friend to Lord Vishnu, surrendering everything to Lord Vishnu. These are the processes by which one can elevate themselves to pure devotional service and ultimately return back to the spiritual world. So his father was mortified when he heard that. Where did he learn all this? So he turned to the teachers and said, what are you teaching? You're supposed to be Brahmins, you're supposed to be understanding what I want him to learn, and what are you teaching? He said, we're not teaching him anything. We don't know where he got this knowledge from. Maybe there's some Vaishnava sneaking into school and polluting him with this Vaishnava philosophy. So Hiranyakashipu said, all right, take him back and train him in the proper way. And so they took him back. Prahlad was very obedient. And then they tried again. But Prahlad would not listen. And every time there was a recess time and the kids would play, he would tell his students, his fellow students, hey, you are young, and you know that actually, that if you want to be happy in life, you have to worship Lord Vishnu, because he is the Supreme Lord. And so you should take up the worship of Lord Vishnu right now, and I will teach you how to do that. They would say, Prahlad, we're so young. We're just children. When we grow up, then we'll become devotees of God. We want to play. And so Prahlad would say, yes, young is, but old, he said, old means just before you die. And no one knows when they're going to die, so no one can say when they're old or when they're young. So he was preaching like that. And again, of course, the two teachers became very upset, finding out that he was teaching Vaishnava philosophy to his fellow students. They brought him back to his father and said, we can't do anything with him. You have to take care of him. So again, Hiranyakashipu started to preach to him the demonology, how to become a nice demon, how to overcome your fellow man and conquer his kingdom, take his wealth, and subjugate everything else. These are the philosophies of the demons. They're still alive today, just in case you're wondering why things are not going right in the world. Prabhupada used to say, we have no fear of Maya, but because the world is full of demons, Maya has to serve the demons, therefore we have so many difficulties coming. But that's another subject. And so he tried again to preach to his son, but he wouldn't listen. And then Prahlad, there's 3 famous verses in the 6th chapter where he describes that here again, that one should take the dust of the lotus feet of the great souls and place that dust upon one's head. And by doing that, one will achieve all auspiciousness, become free from all anxiety and all fear, and actually attain the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. So Prahlad was only 5 years old, but he was fearless in the face of his father. He wanted to make his father a devotee. His father wasn't about to change. And everything Prahlad said, he rejected and became angry. So this went on for so many times. So now Prahlad wouldn't listen to his father, and he kept preaching to his father. So Hiranyakashipu said, you are actually a curse to the whole family. He said that when the body has a particular limb that is diseased, then that limb has to be cut off, because otherwise it will pollute and kill the whole body. So you're like a disease to our whole family. Therefore, you should be killed. So he called his demon associates and said, take him away, and tortured him in so many ways. So Prahlad was very obedient. He went along. And the first thing they did, they took swords and tried to stab him. And Prahlad was completely absorbed in the lotus feet of the Lord. And because he was, none of the swords could even touch him, not to speak of hurting him. It's completely free. They were frustrated in that attempt. They took him, they threw him in some hot boiling oil, but the oil had no effect. They took him to one area, they threw him off a high mountain, but Krishna was on the bottom to catch him. You can see the picture of Krishna catching him as he was thrown off the mountain. They tried to kill him in so many ways. Hiranyakashipu's sister, her name was Holika. Holika. So she had a benediction. She could not be burned by fire. So they decided to burn Prahlad. So they put Prahlad on Holika's lap, and they set fires all around. But Holika died in the fire, and Prahlad was okay. Because this is the material energy, and he was absorbed in thinking about Krishna in a very loving way, and therefore he was not affected by anything material. We should understand that this is actually the mercy of the Lord. And one who remembers the Lord, and especially one who chants the glories of the Lord, can never be affected by anything in this material world, no matter how dangerous it is. There's a story in our Krishna conscious movement back in 1971. I think it was the war in Bangladesh at that time. Prabhupada had sent 2 sannyasis to go preach in Bangladesh during the war. And it was a pretty vicious war. And they were preaching, and then it got quite dangerous. So Prabhupada tried to bring the sannyasis back, but there was no communication. The war had broken all communications. But some of the local people were saying, you better leave here because it's dangerous. So the Islamic army, who was in charge at that time, had arranged for buses to get for anyone who wanted to leave the country who was not involved with the war. In other words, they weren't Hindu. If they weren't Hindu, they could get on the bus and they could go and leave the country. So these 2 sannyasis got on the bus. And they're going, but when they got to the border, the Islamic army stopped the bus, got on the bus, and saw that these 2 sadhus were there, pulled them off the bus and put them in front of a firing squad. And they were about to kill him by means of a firing squad. So they're standing there. One was Brahmananda, the other one was Pushta Krishna Maharaj. So Brahmananda, all of a sudden, he has his beads and he holds his beads high in the air and he starts chanting as loud as he can. And he says, we're going back to Godhead. Haribo! Haribo! We're going back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. And then Krishna Maharaj joined in and they're both chanting. And then the Islamic army got bewildered. And the leader came over and said, get on the bus and get out. So this by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, nothing can happen to you. That's guaranteed. Don't try to walk in front of a car and prove it. But if you were in a situation where danger was there, the holy name, as soon as you take shelter of the holy name, all danger is gone. That is the power of Krishna by remembering Krishna. So Prahlad was absorbed in Krishna. He was not only chanting, but he was absorbed in thinking of Krishna within his heart and his mind. So everything they tried, they failed. His father came and took him and threw him in the ocean, threw a mountain on top of him, but still he got away. Nothing worked. Finally, after so many attempts to kill him, Radhikasipu became a little concerned. Where did this boy get all this power from? So he brought him, he said, my dear Lord, you know, if you want to be successful in life, you have to follow the principles that I am teaching because I am successful. You can see how powerful I am wealthy. The demigods, simply by my raising of my eyebrows, they run in fear. So, but Prahlad wouldn't listen to him, so he kept preaching to his father. So his father was getting more angry. So finally he said to Prahlad, where do you get your power from? And Prahlad said something very, edifying, very instructive. He said, my dear father, he always respected his father, although his father was always trying to kill him. My dear father, Surya Bhajya, which means best of the demons, I get my power from the same place you get your power. Same place everybody gets their power, from Krishna. So last thing Radhikasipu, he said, my power is my power. And so he became really angry. He said, now I'm going to finish you off because you are a rascal and an insult to our family. So he took out his sword and started waving it around. And he says, where is your God? Where is he? Is he here in one direction? He here in another direction? Come here in another direction. And in another, no. And then Prahlad was saying, yes, Father, he's everywhere. Is he in this pillar? Yes, he is. And he smashed the pillar with his sword. And all of a sudden, the whole universe started to shake. The pillar turned bright red and became like fire. And out of it, I wish I had the Bhagavad Gita. It describes the appearance of the Shringadeva who appeared. It's huge. So, and Hiranyakashipu was looking at this form. The demigods, when they heard the whole universe shake when the Lord appeared, they said, oh no, our planets are in trouble. Now Hiranyakashipu is going to destroy us. They didn't know. And the Lord appeared. And then Hiranyakashipu said, this must be some trick of the demigods. Nobody can kill me. I'm invincible. So what is this little trick they're trying to play? But he decided to fight. So he took his sword and started to charge at the Shringadeva. And it says that the Shringadeva was so fearful looking. His tongue was like a razor that was going from side to side. His neck was small. His ears were straight up. And he was angry. He was really angry. Why was he angry? Because his pure devotee was harassed by this demon. And so there's a fight. And Hiranyakashipu, he's flying in the air, but Sringadeva's form is so fearful and he can't look at it. So he's closed his eyes and he's fighting with the Sringadeva. And the Sringadeva is just knocking it down, throwing it this way and that way. And finally, the Lord decided to stop playing with him. So he picked him up just like, says like a little kid picks up an insect. And he threw him on his lap, and with his nails, Rajadamstra, he bifurcated the belly of Hiranyakashipu. He took his heart and threw it. The patient, the operation was successful, the patient died. And then he took the intestines out of the body of the Sringatana, of Hiranyakashipu. He put it on himself as a garden. Why did the Lord do that? Why did he guard himself with the intestines of Hiranyakashipu? Because this Hiranyakashipu was Jai, his gatekeeper in the spiritual world. So the Lord knew that, and so he honored his devotee who was now fighting with him as a ferocious being. And then he took the body and threw it. And then, no, he didn't throw it because he knew if he threw the body of Hiranyakashipu, the whole universe would shake, and all the oceans would start to fall. So he just took the body and pushed it off his lap. And then all the demon followers of Hiranyakashipu charged after the Sringadeva. You can see the picture. He's just killing millions and millions of these followers. Finally, everything is done, all the demons are killed, Hiranyakashipu is finished. And then the demigods, they're watching this whole thing from the spiritual world. And then there is, they're wondering. Now they understand this, the Supreme Lord has appeared. But he appeared in such a way as he kept the benedictions of Lord Brahma. He didn't kill him on land, sea, or air. He killed him on his lap. He didn't kill him in day or night. He killed him in dusk, which is between day and night. It wasn't any, he didn't kill him with any weapons. He used his nails. He didn't, what's the other one? Inside or outside, yeah. He used it on the threshold. So he kept all of the benedictions of Lord Brahma and killed the demon. This goes to show, don't ever try to outsmart the Lord. He knows everything. And he knows everything, and he knows exactly how to respond to each one of us. And therefore, he is an expert and giving everyone whatever they need according to how they approach him. After that, Hiranyakashipu was still, Sringadeva was still ferocious. He was just growling. And no one could pacify him. Demigods came, Brahma was there, Saraswati, Lakshmi Devi was there, Prahlad was there. So Brahman wanted to pacify him, but he knew he couldn't approach him. So he said to Lakshmi, that's your husband. She said, I don't recognize him. Oh, yes, you should go. She said, no, I'm not going. So she refused to go. And Brahma turned to Prahlad and said, he came on your behalf, you have to pass. So you see a picture where Prahlad has a garland. He's coming up to the Lord, he's standing there. And the Lord, as soon as he saw Prahlad, he turned in that direction and he became peaceful. And then he put Prahlad on his lap. He was so affectionate to Prahlad. The Sringadeva is very affectionate to his devotees. Very affectionate. And it cannot be emphasized how affectionate he is to his devotees. He likes to give his mercy to his devotees. What does Narsing do for the devotees? He does three things. Bhakti-Vinod Thakur explains. He protects against material dangers. That's one thing. Two, he destroys material illusions. In other words, you might think that I can enjoy something in this material world, but those who worship the Sringadev, he will reveal that that is simply illusion, it's simply Maya, it's not an enjoyable item. And the third principle that he does is that he uproots the sinful desires that situate in the hearts of the living entities. Just like Hiranyakashipu was, what was he? He was a contamination. So he represents sinful activities. And so the Lord dispersed him. There's a beautiful prayer that is given in the 5th canto by Sri Prahlad Maharaj describing the glories of Lord Vishnudev. Would you like to learn that prayer? Should we try chanting it? Okay, I will repeat it word by word. Om Namo Bhagavate Narsingha. Puja Tejase Avir Bhava Rajanaka Rajadamstra Namasayan Radhana Om Grasa Om Swaha Abhayam Atmani Bhuyasta Om Shram. We have the translation. Anyone have their phone? It's 5:18:8. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18:8. We can read the translation. It's beautiful. Would you like to do it again?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a very powerful. I'll do it a little bit more faster. Om Namo Bhagavate Narsingha. Teja Tejase Avir Bhava Rajanaka Rajadamstra Amasayam Radhaya Rasagrasa Om Swaha Abhayam Bhuyasta Om Shram.
I offer my respectful messages unto Lord Vishnudev, the source of all power. O my Lord, who possesses nails and teeth just like other birds, kindly vanquish our human-like desires for food activity in this material world. Please appear in our hearts and drive away our ignorance, so that by your mercy we may become fearless in the sacrifice in this material world.
So if you chant that prayer, you can look it up, the 5th canto, 18th chapter, verse number 8. You'll always be protected by Lord and Sri. It's very, very powerful prayer. It's spoken by Sri Prahlad. So now the Lord says to Prahlad, Prahlad, take a benediction. You have served me so nice. Your devotion to me is perfect. I want to give you something. Take a benediction. And Prahlad responded, I'm not a Vanik. I'm not a merchant. I don't worship you for something. I'm simply worshiping you out of love. But the Lord didn't want to hear that. He wanted Prahlad to take a benediction. He said, ask something. And Prahlad said, all right, if you insist, my dear Lord, then give my father liberation. He said, that's already done. soon as he was killed by the nails of Lord Sringadev, he achieved liberation. And then the Lord was persistent. Take a benediction. I want to give you something. I want to show my love for you. And so Prahlad said, all right, my dear Lord, you want to give me something, and let me stay in this material world and become your devotee and preach to the fools and rascals of Veda homework civilization. And the Lord was so amazed and at the same time so happy that his devotee wasn't asking anything for himself. He simply wanted to be an instrument for the Lord's mercy to bring others to Krishna consciousness. But this is the quality of Prahlad. Prahlad never asked anything. But the Lord did say, I want something I do want you to do. I want you to get married, have a family, and I want you to be the king of the Daitya dynasty. You will live in a palace, but I know you will never be affected by any of these things in the material world, and you can rule the world from that point. And he accepted it. And Prahlad stayed in the material world as a great king, and he had many followers. So this is a little bit about the story. So we should meditate on the mercy of Lord Sringadev, because his mercy is the complete mercy that we need in order to live in this material world. Prahlad Maharaj was worshiping Krishna, the Supreme Lord, in his form as Krishna in Vrindavan. The Lord appeared to him in the Sringadev because it was just suitable in order to fulfill the desire of Lord Brahma by giving him the benediction and at the same time to protect his devotee. And this particular manifestation of the Lord is very amazing. And many of you know, around the world, Lord Sringadev appears in different places. Throughout many places in India, and I use the word many, there are self-manifesting deities of Lord Sringadev that are being worshipped today in many places, especially in South India. So the Lord is very much prominent in the world. And Srila Prabhupada, when the devotees first got attacked in the early days, Prabhupada said, now I will give you another mantra. Namaste Narasriha. Hiranyakasi Urvaksha Shivarandra Ito Nasimha Bharato Nasimha Yato Yami Tato Nasimha Mahena Simha Vigrahena Simha Narasimha Mahim Sharanam Adhuta Singha Lalita Hiranyakashipu Anubhima Kesavadita Nanatirupa Jayaganisha Hare So we chant this prayer every day in our temples. Please take it with you, chant it in your homes, worship your deities, and also pray to Lord Nisringadev. My dear Lord Nisringadev, you are so kind, so merciful. Please protect me. Please put me on the path of devotional service and remove all of the obstacles that come my way of living in this material world. So thank you very much. Shri Nrsinga Bhagavan ki jai. Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Is there any questions? Just to see, comments, questions? Okay. Next.
There's a girl upstairs.
Hare Krishna. So, are we upstairs?
Yeah, they are ready.
Ready.
Yeah, they are just yes.
Thank you very much for coming. And the next part of the program is drama. They want to do it upstairs. So then, the drama Prasad is not given. So I request everyone of you to please go upstairs and put in especially for the next part of the program.